I believe it's early morning for my guest today, and I'm super excited about bringing you our guest today because we're definitely going to be talking about culture, which you know I love here on the show, and really understanding how you actually maybe evolve it and actually get it to work over decades. And also, we're going to be talking about how to get the right people in the right seats, and we're going to be also talking about how to actually deal with some of the challenges we have in the world, especially climate change, which is a huge, huge one. With that said, I would love to welcome you, Denise from Champagne Hospitality. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Michael. Nice to be here.
And Denise, for people that haven't heard about you or Champagne Hospitality, can you give them a bit of background on what has your journey been individually, and how did you came up with Champagne Hospitality, and what are you all about?
Oh, Michael, that's a great question and goes back generations. I'm a fourth generation hospitality person on my
Mm,
mother's side and third generation on my father's side.
yeah.
My great great grandmother was in the hotel business in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my grandparents on my father's side immigrated from Germany and started a ski area in Western Pennsylvania. So I
Mm,
come by it honestly. I grew up in the business and got to see all of the inner workings, which can be both exciting and also rewarding as you think about what's happening in the back of the house that makes people smile in the front of the house. So
mm.
been in the business in a family way for a long time. And along my journey, I did some detours, but I found myself coming right back because I just loved the spirit of it.
And what made you co-found Champagne Hospitality, and what is it that you're trying to do with your business?
Yeah, I think, well, I should say for a good part of my career, I was a faculty member and in fact the dean of a hotel school for a while. And probably the biggest inspiration is the thing that I most loved about teaching, particularly in a professional field, was watching a freshman migrate through their college experience, becoming a senior, and giving them career counseling and coaching, and seeing the extraordinary energy and excitement as they launched their careers. And I thought, wow, it would be an incredible part of the journey to start with those college seniors or entry level people and watch what happens in a business going forward. And some bit of it was serendipity and opportunity in developing a hotel that came my way, that I decided to do a bit of a career pivot and change from being in the classroom to being on the ground. I'd always spent a lot of time, even when I was in the classroom, consulting or in the field, because I think it's the kind of academic learning that you have to be fresh and current to
Mm.
be helpful to students entering. So it was really sort of the joy of developing careers.
And how did that turn into you then started, a business? Because I guess like being in academia and then suddenly go out to business, it's quite a change. It's very two very different environments. It's different my own experience.
For sure. And in fact, in some ways, it was a bit of a scary moment. It's, can you walk the walk? Can you do what you've said you've tried to coach people to do all along? And it turns out that my business background from various other experiences working with both international hotel companies as a hotel consultant and also working with private companies turned out to be really valuable. So the ability to kind of arrive at the conversation with a real breadth of experience, both in marketing and finance and human resources, all of the component pieces that make a business fly. And obviously in the hospitality business, the human element of it is extraordinarily critical. That's what makes the business.
And if you should describe the business to the audience, how does the business look today if I come and visit you and buy your services, and what kind of experience is it that Champagne Hospitality is curating?
Yeah, I'd underscore one of the words in your question, which is experience, Michael, because I think in today's world, there's so much complexity. There's so much people are trying to unpack. So much comes at people. I think the stakes for how people think about the value of any vacation or travel time in some ways goes up tremendously. So the expectations are really high. That was the challenge that I set for myself, which is, how do you think about creating an environment that truly gives people an experience that recharges their mind, their soul, their spirit. That's the challenge. That's the high end. And we chose to develop our company around a pretty specific kind of product. We wanted it to be relatively small so that the quality of service had a deep connection to the people that were there. So very thoughtful about how many guests we could, in fact, take good care of at one time. So that became part of the model. And we learned and evolved as it went. You don't have all the answers when you start by any means.
And how did you get started then? What because you build now a quite an incredible business, and then how did you actually evolve that business? How did you get started from having that concept to actually execute it on and actually make it to what it is today?
Great question, Michael. That was in part learning by doing. That
Mm,
was taking a framework for what I understood about the operations of a hotel. So I at least had a vision, having worked in hotels, for what I wanted the end part of it to look like. The beginning part, the actual development of hotels, I didn't come by that naturally, though I had some exposure to it. So that was the rich learning part. And in some ways, if you know where you're going, so you know what you want the operations to look like, boy, what an advantage if you can be at the very beginning thinking about the end.
mm,
And I think that was the insight, that if we could, because our hotels, we for the most part start from scratch, and
mm,
either start with a piece of land or start with something that needs significant renovation. It sometimes can be very messy, it can be complicated, but at least it has the ability to be what you want it to be at the end. So thinking about how you marry design and something that really captures the imagination of a guest when they arrive, but it also has to work. So it can't just be beautiful, it has to also be operationally workable, and more than workable, it has to be operationally super smooth, and that you naturally put elements together that what the guest experience is wow, right? That's what you're after.
and it's quite interesting. You said before, you said we decided we have to keep quite small to create this kind of experience. Can you give an idea about how big is the
Sure,
group, and
sure.
and where parts are you in the world, and why those locations?
Yeah, super. Well, I'll take that in two parts. The first, in terms of size, we think about our product as being about 50 rooms as the target. It can be a little
Mm,
bit more than that or a little bit less, but what we think about is you have to have enough rooms, enough revenue, if you will, to support the kind of services that you want to provide. And you if you're too small, you can surely provide very custom service, but you can't necessarily get the people that you want to get, because you
mm,
want to be able to pay people really well, so you need revenue to be able to think about that. So we think about it as sort of a sweet spot between, there's gorgeous and incredible bed and breakfasts or Airbnbs that are smaller, and then there's a lot bigger hotels that can handle big groups. We sort of play in the middle with a very specialized, we say, couture product. And the reason why that word becomes relevant to the answer your second question, we focus most of our energies in France and French speaking places. That happens in part just because of a true affection that I've always had and my husband has always had for je ne sais quoi, the joie de vivre, the French. And we've always loved Paris. We've loved biking in France. So it's one of those times where it came to us naturally. And I think the reason why that becomes relevant as we've evolved the company is twofold. One, if you're really excited yourself about going to your own hotels and investing in them and thinking about them, it starts from your heart, and that translates to everyone in the business. And then I think the second part, I have such respect for where the French have led the world in some ways. They're surely our competitors, but in food, in wine, in fashion, in culture, in style, in art, and again, many other competitors, like I say. But certainly, and Paris is the most visited city in the world. So there's something there. And we have as one final element, which is logical to France as well, done a fair amount of work in the wine business as well. One of the important layers of the experience in some of our hotels, not all of them, is that they have a relationship with a wine region. And we've thought seriously about how we really give people the inside scoop on how it works, how vignerons really deliver what happens in the bottle when you sit down to celebrate an occasion.
Yeah, I love that, Denise, because that was like my next question. When I looked at your collection, I was thinking, is there like an element to wine here? Is this a deep connection? And you see this, and also I guess that there's a love for champagne because that's champagne hospitality, and it's very I can see somehow you're trying you I don't know if it's been conscious or unconscious, because I feel like there's an ecosystem of it's not just about the hotel, it's also about where it is and how you connect with that community.
Yeah, the answer is yes! Exclamation point. I actually genuinely do love champagne, and that champagne with a small c. And I think if you think about what champagne means to most people in the world, it connects to celebration, it connects to special occasion, it connects to I'm feeling joyful, it connects to there's a reason why I'm uplifted. One of our hotels has as a motto, if you will, this is in Epernay, so literally in the middle of the Champagne region, is make it pop. And we
Mm.
think about that as part of our culture, that every day, that sound of a champagne cork popping, that's what we want. We want every guest to feel that emotion that happens when you pop a champagne cork, because it's usually tied to all kinds of special occasions or celebrations of some kind. So
I love that metaphor again, because it becomes a very simple message to follow and understand for everyone when they of course have experienced that. But what is the purpose then? Is the purpose to, you know, get bigger? And what is the whole philosophy around, the foundation of what you're doing, what you're doing?
yeah, I mean, growth is surely something we think about, but so deliberately. Getting really big isn't the goal. The goal is much more about thinking about how we can not only create an experience for our guests that's extraordinary, but there's some other elements here, like to have a work environment where people genuinely love coming to work, and that you're taking such good care of people. So there's a ring around it that has to do with your staff, your team. And then we really think about the communities that we're in. Like, how can I make a difference? Sometimes a business that draws visitors can have impact on a local community, and how can we go beyond that? How do we think about it? And finally, I think it has become in bold relief. I think for any business, you have to think about the planet, right? Like the
Mm.
community, planet Earth that we all live in. So there's so many dimensions. So it doesn't, we don't have to go fast and we don't have to go big. We just have to do really well in each community where we're investing.
And I guess also coming back to what you said before, it's interesting is that it's a blank canvas every time you do a hotel, and you create that unique experience, of course, with the values, the philosophy, the culture as an advantage. You don't start from scratch there, but again, you need to look at each individual place because it's a new community and a different. And you mentioned also there, which I think is really something that's really interesting. You talked about climate change, and we talked a bit about it before we did this interview as part of our preparation as well. We talked about climate change and the role of businesses and especially hospitality. What is your thoughts on that? Because I think you have like a very interesting, because you are in some of the locations you are in are definitely threatened by climate change.
Yeah, well, let me offer two examples. We have a property in the Caribbean in the French West Indies, and
Mm.
when Hurricane Irma rolled through, it was in just the beginning of year two of our hotel, so it was brand new, just a spectacular launch. We were so excited about the first year, and in one day, the hotel was nearly destroyed as the hurricane hung over the island. If you need a wake up call to understand the impact of how climate change can demonstrably change a community, change an island, change a business, boy, that was it. So it was a time where we said, how do we think about this really differently and profoundly across all of our businesses? And it launched, if you will, an even deeper desire to think about that. And we've made enormous progress in our properties just in terms of sustainability and clean energy and zero food waste cooking, and how do we help the communities that we're in, whether it's coral restoration on a beach or biodynamic wine in France. And similarly, we're very focused in our wine businesses in biodynamics, early player in that. It's now become much more on trend, even though we started that quite a while ago. But just thinking every day about it, and to be perfectly honest, what we're incredibly helped by is the younger people are that come to join our teams, the more they care too.
Mm.
So they have good ideas, they have energy around it. So it's table stakes now. It's a must do to be really thoughtful about sustainability.
And is there any like specific things you are focusing on right now besides all the things, and something new you're starting to actually look into to the future? Because I guess climate change and the agenda moves all the time. That's definitely how I feel it. And what you needed to do tomorrow, you probably need to do double up tomorrow. But there's also new things you can do as you start that journey, because it seems like you already have a lot of layers and initiatives there's pile up. Is it different initiatives in locations, or is it more like a group kind of approach, or do you take the best ideas and copy them?
Yeah, I'd say it's yes and yes.
Mm.
Sometimes there are great ideas that are translatable across all of the properties, and we experience share. One of the things that we really pride ourselves in is in our different hotel teams, even though that tends to be very much a unit, but that's just the way it works in the business. That particular hotel has a group of people that are a unit. We really try to create connections to your like situated career path to someone at another hotel, where you have the ability to really run ideas by them, and it's a thought partner in some ways. And we do that at all levels. I think some companies do it just at the top levels. I try to do it even for entry level teams, even for interns. Like let's create a community where they can share. But I do think that the initiative that emerges to answer part of your question that I think is different and is new, I think everyone is much more willing to pitch in now. I think
Mm.
guests are more amenable to how can I help? And in fact, we're now seeing people who book with us because we are doing what we're doing, that
Mm.
they celebrate and support. We want to be, we want to stay at a place that cares. So some specific examples, we're looking at some new evolution in a beachside setting where we are trying to think about how we encourage our guests to not use air conditioning, even
Hmm.
though in the really deluxe product that we're trying to deliver, that is in some ways what we've always done. People expect air conditioning, but if you can get your guest mindset to be, okay, you're right, it's 72 degrees tonight and there's a beautiful breeze, and you're right, I can help you save energy. So thinking about ways where guests still feel completely pampered and where they can contribute in a way that is so easy, like don't make it hard for people to help. And I think a lot of hotels are doing a lot of things with respect to, simple things like hang your towel if you can use it again and put it in the bathtub if you don't want to use it. Sort of thinking about that in a much more expansive way. Like, where are all the places that we use energy and how can our guests help? Because I think guests are more willing to be part of that and, in fact, feel good that they have stayed at a place that cares about the planet. And I think that number is growing. So I'd say that's a piece that's emerging.
And it's becoming, you almost talk about it like when I hear you, if you put business language on like a competitive edge, that you're actually curating that and you are taking the input both from staff and I guess the guest that comes up with ideas and how, and I guess like getting people to stop using air condition when they're in a warm place. It's a huge challenge, a huge notching challenge, because how do you notch without telling them you need to switch it up? How do you get
Exactly.
them involved? Yeah.
Exactly. How do you think about having them feel good about it as opposed to reprimanded in,
Yeah.
or that there's a negative impact? And I will tell you the other piece of it, which I'm completely struck by in all of my work, there is an increasing desire for, I can hire better people because they care too. Right. And when you think about a competitive advantage, if you have a great team, wow, like, and in the hospitality business, and when you think about how you're building culture and the long game of how do I build a culture here that incredibly wants to invest? Like, I, I don't come up with all the good ideas by any means. Like, for me, a good idea can come from anywhere. And that includes my team at whatever level. It includes guests. If you're really attentive to listening to guests, they actually will help you chart the path.
And is that really interesting, because I know lots of people listen to the show. I know because I talk with them because they're very interested in how they get that specific part right, especially around the people, because very good hospitality leaders know that the quality of the people or the quality of the relationship they have with their people and their guests is absolutely paramount for success more than ever. It's not enough just to have a good product. That experience bit is created with human interaction and the quality of their relationship. Could you share with the audience a bit about what have been your approach as you've been building the business, and especially around culture and how you facilitate that? Because culture often is not see is something we do afterwards. It's an afterthought. It's not like this is actually one of our key things we need to get right, like our marketing strategy or our finance and our budgeting and our facility management, the old critical things. But like people sometimes are an afterthought for many, also because it's untangible sometimes.
Yeah, my first comment would be it's really hard work. So start with the mindset that it doesn't just happen, that you really have to be intentional about how you're going to build a culture, how you add members to your team. I guess one of the things I do that is maybe a little bit different, I'm willing to take chances on people if I see that two things happen. One, I get a sense that they genuinely take joy from being with other people, from being part of a service experience for others. Like, it uplifts them, because then it's really natural. Then the reward is on a daily basis. That as a guest smiles, boy, that makes them happy. So that's one piece of it. And the other is, are they curious? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to contribute? Are they willing to be part of a team and dive in and make mistakes? So I'm comfortable hiring people with way less experience, even than might be needed in a particular place, because I'm willing to invest in training. I'm willing to invest in mentorship. I'm willing to have it take a little longer Because if someone has the right attitude and they take joy from the very thing that we're asking them to do, it's not very hard work once they get going because the rewards are natural. So I think it's how you select and how you invest really early on, and how you get a team comfortable with taking risks. So I think the way a company gets really good is to have everyone on your team be in the mindset that I can suggest something and we can test it and we can try it and it works or it doesn't work. We iterate, we move it forward. But setting a structure that equips your team to deal with failure at the same time, that everybody on the team knows it's not like something bad is going to happen if your idea fails. No, actually, we're going to talk about why it failed. What can we do differently? Bravo for giving it a go. Now, why are we smarter? So finding the good in failure, and most importantly, letting people know ahead of time, that's the way we're going to process failure. We're not going to be blaming somebody for doing something wrong. That makes people a lot more courageous.
Is that something you feel when you brought people in over the time, that people are not used to that? Because, you know, failure in many organizations, hospitality, not hospitality, is often something people try to avoid. That's the same
Sure.
when they go to work. I want to avoid failure because don't want to be responsible for failure. And I had a conversation like that yesterday with somebody. I said, well, then you will never try anything above, average. That's for sure. That's my view on it as well. It just become mediocre. And how you talk about is a bit like the good to great companies in Jim Collins' book, the famous management guru. He talks about first who, then what, and it's about the characteristic of people more than their skill sets, but also that failure and allowing the business to make failure are critical, and the people to make failure.
Yeah. And I also think there's a certain package around failure that you can give people that it doesn't feel so intimidating and it doesn't feel so like such a bad thing. And I'll call that, failing forward or smart failure. There's a lot of, work out there that people have written about this. But I think getting people comfortable that there's lots of ways to manage your failure. So set yourself up for the best chance. None of us, if you know the odds of something is going to be better than something else, you're going to place your bet on the thing where you think the odds are better. You're not just going to randomly pick something. So getting people to say, okay, how can I shape whatever the initiative is, given everything I already know? Chances are, in some ways, every move is just an iteration. It's just building on something someone else has already done. There's very little, true innovation that isn't built on something else that's already been done. So what do I already know? And then getting comfortable with a conversation that says, okay, what could go wrong here? Let's imagine what could go wrong and what would we do about it? Because I think, again, if you get people into the mindset that it's okay to talk about failure, because you know what, this could happen, but if it does, this is our idea, we're going to redirect, we're going to go here, but we're not sure that that's what's going to happen. It's going to be yet another thing, and okay, that's going to be our redirect. I think the other thing is you can start with a smaller scale. You don't have to invest enormous amounts of resources to test an idea. So getting people to think about, okay, how big do I have to make this to have it be truly a trial? Like it can't be so small that it's insignificant, but how do I size this? So just getting people comfortable that we're going to fail. Like it's going to happen. That's okay. Here's how we imagine what could go wrong. Here's how we're going to scale it. Here's how we're not going to be random. That's how you sort of do the preamble, right? There's a package of things that you get people comfortable with. Then once you get into the actual trial, if you will, have the courage to know when to stop. Don't rationalize why, okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No, have courage to say, you know what, that didn't work, and be good with that. So knowing when to stop and getting your team comfortable that they are empowered to say, okay, stop. So that's the because sometimes I think you can like you can just keep going and oh, you know, in your heart it's not right and it's not going to work, but you feel like, oh, we've already invested this much and so is going to be upset. No, like if it's a failure, let's call it a failure. And then finally, process the failure. Why did it fail? Be really clear about that. And again, you can see the whole thread here is if everyone feels great at the end of that whole lineup of things, you have won, right? Because then the next time you have a staff meeting, the person who was thinking about, oh, I don't know if I should bring this up or not, but I think this could be a good idea. That's not how they're thinking about it. They're like, I can't wait to get to the staff meeting because I have another idea. I see a way we can make this even better. Sort of having people feel momentum for forward thinking.
I love to work with the team over at Biz Simply because they are always striving to get better, 1% better every day. So I had to share this with you because Biz Simply have launched a new blogcast which highlights some of their favorite Hospitality Maverick podcast episodes over time. And if you're new or hardcore super fan of the show, this is a perfect opportunity to catch up with some of the standout episodes from our massive back catalogue. The Simply team has and will be extensively transcribing interesting moments from each episode while providing some new insights on our brilliant guests, the Mavericks. There's already some great write-ups with Mavericks like Chef Chantel Nicholson and the co-founder of Singerman's Community of Businesses, Ari Weinswine. Find them at bizsimply.com/blog and click blogcast on the right side view. Enjoy.
It's really interesting about that thing when to stop, yeah, because there's a lot of talk about, taking very from the lean startup kind of approach in tech, try, you iterate and test out different things. I guess that ability also to say, when should we stop, testing things? When should we park it? And I think lots of people, when they then get buy-in for a project in a business, they almost afraid for that to fail as well. And actually, it's okay to call out the failure because you did it before the failure actually accumulated in to become the thing,
Yes.
which actually maybe becomes a bit of a risk factor for you or the business for that sake. But actually, you tried, and like most of the time, it's actually that's two elements that really have to be balanced to try, but also to stop before it really, especially as founders. I know that from my own experience where I don't want to stop something because I am so deeply believe in it. But you look at it very, very rational or analytically, or just think about how you really thought about it. Is this ever going to work? If it's a product you want to sell or an idea you want to sell to somebody, and you can be a bit stubborn as the business owner sometimes as well.
Yeah, and Michael, I think your comment about how when you're the founder, so if you're the initiator of the idea,
Hmm.
the people that can come to your rescue is if you have a team that you trust and you're being emotional because you're the founder, you had this idea, but boy, everyone around you sees it a little differently and they have a little more clarity because they don't have the emotional tie that you do. If a team is comfortable knowing that their teammates are looking out for them, and when they say, Michael, actually, this isn't going to work, and you feel good about them coming to your rescue as opposed to feeling badly that your idea failed, that's a real win. Not easy. And not everyone is capable of sort of onboarding that kind of team reflection. But that's another piece of the culture, which is getting a team to really look out for their teammates, right? Like that's hard. That's hard on a sports team. It's hard in a business. But anyone who's ever been on a sports team that like did so incredibly well. It's not just about the athletic ability. Often under the covers is a coach that really cares, is teammates that look out for each other when they have a bad day. I mean, there's an emotional layer underneath of the athletic ability. I think same thing is true in business. You know, if you feel like your team has your back and is really looking out for you, your ability to say, you know, you guys, you're right. How do we get up tomorrow and try something else? I'm good.
It's really interesting because this made me think about a conversation I had with my mentor some weeks ago, and he said, like, CEO in principle has, or CEO founder has a couple of jobs. He said, so it's setting a clear direction or clarity and purpose of direction, and get the right people on the to do the job, and get the wrong people off the bus, as he says. I think he's taking that from Jim Collins. And then he says, get out of the way. In principle, you're the facilitator, you're not the doer in a way. But how do you then, as one of the founding member of the business, facilitate to create this environment? Because in principle, this environment help you make a lot of business decisions that you don't need to be involved in, and therefore you're out of the way. In a way, get out of the way. In
Yeah.
a way.
Well, first, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. I think that advice is spot on. You know, one of the things I coach my team to think about is the most valuable thing that they have is their time. So if you stop to think about how am I spending my time and is it my highest and best use of what I'm doing? Who else could help me do this? Who's better situated to do this? That really is what elevates a leader. You know, if you are a brilliant leader, the whole thing runs without you, right? If you're not there, it's smooth sailing. So if you can encourage everyone on your team to think about their time as so important, and by the way, that also includes nurturing their own interests and taking good care of their own health. And if being part of their communities, which are important, don't short suit yourself on that, because especially in hospitality, if you're joyful and you're excited about being at work, your guest understands that. And if you're the opposite, your guest understands that too. So thinking about how you coach people to spend their time and to know when it's a good use of their time or that someone else on their team. And by the way, there's a benefit if it's someone who reports to you and you're letting them do something that has typically been on your plate. Guess what? Their career moves up and so does yours. And if that ripples the whole way down in your organization, then the whole boat rises, right? Everybody wins all the way down the line.
How would you say, well, you can also, I can ask in a different way, what are the critical elements for you to sustain that culture? What is it that do you have some rituals? Is there processes you do? Because in my view, everybody, there's an element of building a people strategy or a people approach that has 10 things you need to do, from recruitment to performance management to benefits and compensation, but exactly how people mix them up, that's really critical. Exactly, some people leave some steps out as well. They're not doing the whole cycle of people initiatives and technology or whatever it is they use, but actually they're very aware about how they mixture this up compared to the end experience they need to create.
Yeah, I guess this goes back to my roots, the first question that you asked.
Yeah.
I try to be on the ground. I try to remember what it is to be at every position in our team and try to, in some ways, roll up my sleeves and be part of that. It underscores my belief that good ideas can come from anywhere. And if everyone on my team knows that I work with them, they don't work for me, I work with them, and trying to think about that on a daily basis and be on the ground in important ways. I also think there are times in every business where you being there can matter a lot. There are important moments. In the wine business, it's harvest every year. That is a year's worth of work that comes to fruition or not
Mm.
in a 7 to 14-day period, and it's highly stressful and weather dependent, and Mother Nature's in charge, not you, and it's all hands on deck, and it's late hours, and in the hotel business, there can be multiple of them. It's a hotel opening. That's a really exciting moment to take a building that is just furniture and ready to go and watch what happens when you infuse it with your first check-ins. It's about moments of celebration that can be big or small. Being there and having your team know you're there and you care really matters. And that's sort of a piece of my leadership that I take as seriously as anything else I do, which is truly trying to infuse in everyone's mind that works for our company, you matter as much as our guests matter. Like this is a team effort, and I think the other piece of it is I think it's really important to have a sense of humor and to have fun. I try to think about ways that you can take care of your teams that go beyond, like, what's the emotional care that you can do? What really
Mm.
makes your team thrive beyond all of the normal check boxes that we could describe?
What is one of the most pressing, you say, if we take a course a bit a different direction in the industry you would like to see solved? There's many in the moment, but it's like, what is the number one? If that goes, you will think it's like a 20 to 80% solution to 20% to solve 80%.
Yeah, I think it's not unlike so many businesses, and I look to other CEOs in other industries that see how they're solving for it, and it's mismatches between the talent set that you need and the availability of the talent, right? It's just
Mm.
there aren't enough good people with the right training to necessarily fill all the positions, right? And we've seen with the post-COVID era, where I think we're running the greatest experiment in redo, and we don't know what the outcome is. Is hybrid the right answer? Is
Mm.
in person the right answer? Is work from wherever the right answer? It's a little less impactful in hospitality because it's pretty hard to run a hotel or a restaurant
Yeah.
if you're not there, right? But some positions in a hotel it can be remote, so it's not 100-0. But the step way back is, how do I, if what are the sources, what are the alternatives that I have, right? So if you have a shortage, well, that means you either have to grow them yourself or find them in a different way. I will say there's a piece of this, however, in culture where different countries have different views on this. And
Mm.
I think the French experience that we've had, which is quite different than and the American view, hospitality is more of a career aspiration
Mm.
than it is in the US, for example. And so therefore our ability to succeed and to think about engaging with a young person who's joined one of our properties to to have the head start that they are actually thinking about, wow, this could be my career, and what's my career path, as opposed to this is a way station to pay my college bills or to pay whatever. It's a temporary thing,
Yeah.
which happens more in the US, if that makes sense. So that's an advantage. And I think about how did, and true in many European countries, why is that? How do they think about that? What has created that? And how could I translate that to anywhere that I went in the world? Tough question.
And why do you think it felt like when I looked at it as well, because I think already when I ran, uh, when I ran restaurants in my early 20s, I already felt it was difficult to get enough of the right people, and it could be from a both from a skills, but just you're getting enough at certain time of the year because there's of course seasonality that hits you, and it's like any business in hospitality that is just high season, and Christmas and winter was really big in that business. And what was it that went wrong for us? Why were we felt like a bit like we all knew it would come at some point where we hadn't done enough to create that culture. And it's not about the individual company, it's more like an industry. It's like we hadn't created the framework to foster enough young people to see, oh, this is a great place to be. You make happy people when they go out, you can serve them nice food or give them a nice experience. It's really rewarding job in that way. But suddenly it's looked now, it's always been a challenging industry to be seen working in, but it seems like now it's really become the dark sheep of the family in a way. If you work in hospitality, almost.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, I would guess if you pull on the rope, this comes back fundamentally to what education and opportunity is
Mm,
available for people. This is well beyond an industry comment, right? This is
yeah,
a national or even international
yeah,
situation. So, quite honestly, it's one of the reasons why I feel like my career in education and higher education is really helpful here, because I'm cognizant of what it looks like if someone has a great education and succeeds and goes on versus not. So that's always on my mind. But that's big. That's all of us. That's countrywide educational systems and skills training, and I think the rapid evolution in the U.S. in particular of technology, like where is this taking us, and what skill sets does our young workforce need, and do they see the opportunity, and is it affordable, and that's going to take a lot of great minds thinking together
yeah.
to solve that one.
I was actually, I was a part of I was listening into a panel, which was very nice to not be involved in something the other day in a hospitality panel. And actually, I was sitting and reflecting and making some notes. And one of the things they all talked about AI and the threat. And I was start thinking, if you look a bit counterintuitive, it's actually AI is actually helping hospitality because at some point people will first of all need an income, but also they will find out that human connection instead of just a screen, as we do right now, is extremely important uh, part of having a good life. And actually, if I can have a job, there's a lot of human contact. It might become interesting. It might be having a very different structure in 10 years' time when AI really roll out and the hospitality jobs, maybe technology help you with a lot of the automation that needs to be done in things that there's no reason for you to do anyway, because it's not about creating a here and now experience. It's about filling out some spreadsheets or whatever it is. But I was almost thinking that AI could help us in a way. It could definitely be a driver to more people want to come back into the hospitality industry at some point.
Yeah, I think there's sort of two pieces to how I think about that. One, I'm smiling because not that long ago I actually went to Chat GPT-4 and said, "Could you help me think about how artificial intelligence can help the hospitality business?" And in sub 6 seconds, Chat GPT came back to me with 12 ideas ranging from customer analytics to answering complaints to fascinating, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, here's my thought partner that invested 3 seconds, and
Yeah.
I'm wrestling with a big problem. But to your second observation, in some ways, the hospitality industry is insulated. I think I want to be open minded that life can change, but insulated to how there is no substitute for going somewhere and staying somewhere, and we all eat food and want to have an experience. So I don't think any kind of AI can have you have something else take your vacation for you.
No.
I think AI can't eat breakfast for you. Like I think there are some limits to what AI can do. So I think in I agree with you that there is a piece of what hospitality actually is, which in some ways is a very old industry, very old fashioned. I mean, when you think about the origins of, the
Mm,
Roman roads
yeah,
and what popped up in the thermopoplums was, okay, this is how far the horses could make it in a day, and they needed, food, and that's what staged how far apart
yeah.
the various, places were. So, but hopefully it's a plus in ways that let us save labor. Back to my comment about how are you spending your time?
Mm,
If AI could help every member of my team take something off their plate in a better way, that's an interesting, intriguing idea, right? Because then they can spend more time doing something else or with a guest or something that's more meaningful.
yeah. How do you, Denise, keep on, you know, reinventing yourself? How do you show up in the best version of yourself every day? What is like your top trick as the one of the leading members of the organization and keep on moving forward even in challenging times?
Well, Michael, that's a great question. It truly gets at how late in my career I did a dramatic pivot from the classroom to the career that has me doing something completely different. So I can assure you that was a enormously invigorating, sometimes scary kind of reset. I think for me, I try to constantly be curious. Like, don't take things at face value. Be open minded. Understand what's happening in different parts of the world. I think of myself as a student, not a teacher, even though I was a teacher for so many years. And then I think the other thing that we all should do, I think as a human race, hopefully we're all going to live longer, is how do we all think about taking better care of ourselves? I think about that with respect to all of our businesses. How do we create, in the broadest sense, healthy, invigorating, uplifting experiences, food, all of that we do that helps us all take better care of each other. So I try to think about that. Don't always have all the time in the day to do everything you want to do. So that's the wrestle, right? Is okay, no, you got to carve time to do that. You have to take care of your emotional self. And you commented earlier in this interview about taking the time to just listen to something that you just wanted to listen to, and like that was like a special half hour or hour or however much you spent on that. So being more deliberate about, okay, how do we do that? How do I take that hour and just listen to something that might jog my creative brain or rejuvenate me in some way? I take incredible joy from nurturing my team. So if there's one thing that makes me younger and more excited every day, it's helping somebody else do that for them. That's just my personality. And so that's how I think about one of the places where I can do the most as the founder and the leader of the company.
I love that. Yeah, because also that's always there's been a lot about mindfulness, meditations, and I try to do a bit of it. Actually, it's also sometimes for me, it's also being able to help other people or being involved in communities with thing actually gives me a lot of energy and actually takes me away from my work in some kind of way because I don't see it as a work thing. It's something I really enjoy doing. And it might be a connection to work somehow, but it's really a thing I enjoy and I'm almost in flow as I do it. And therefore it's good for me and it makes me relax. And I really love that. What is your one advice to a couple of questions more here, Denise, but what is your one advice, to leaders that's also trying like yourself to try to build a business as a force for good, one that does good for people, community, and the planet?
Well, I think about humility in the answer to that question. And the leaders that I most admire, they have this sense of humility in addition to being so impactful and so thoughtful. You like want to be around them, and it's clear it's about others, not about them. So
Mhm.
the one thing that I think about is, how do I make sure that I never let go of the first day of any job? How do you stay humble? How do you put yourself in the shoes of a new person that feels like they've taken a big risk? They've just taken a new job. Like, what's that feeling? And if you can revisit that feeling, I think it keeps you more connected to everyone in your company. You're in their shoes. And so as I look at other leaders, that's one of the traits that I most admire. Those leaders that are just so incredibly amazing, and yet you hear them speak and it's never about them. It's about it's it and it and they also have a certain calmness to them. I think it's a little bit the place where I can imagine that the Buddhist monks get to,
Mm.
or people who truly have a sense of spirit, that they're comfortable with who they are and what they've contributed. And I think great leaders actually really do that. It's something that I look for in leaders. And when I see that quality, I stop and say, okay, how are they doing that? What is their pattern? What does their daily pattern look like?
It's a specific leader that has, it could be somebody you read about, maybe somebody you met, or somebody that inspired you on your journey that has actually, that these traits is exactly where you're taking them from.
Yeah, well, you're going to have me pick a specific one, so I'll do that. But let me give a bit of an intro to the thematic of it. I have always, from a young age, read biographies of women who have had impact, from Catherine the Great to Clara Barton, like the whole lineup. So my specific answer to you would be Sandra Day O'Connor. And the reason why I say that is because um, I loved her practicality, right? She was so thoughtful in taking in all the information and all the cases that she, had to judge, literally. And all of her writings were so readable. They weren't filled with legal jargon. They were understandable. Her logic was clear. She obviously was one of the few women on the Supreme Court and held her own in great ways. And the other piece is, look, she was one of the few judges that actually stepped down, wasn't there for life because of a family situation. She had the courage to choose and to realize that her family mattered more, to be with her husband. Like, that's such good stuff. And I also think she had such a sense of humor, and relative to her impact on all of the decisions, such humility. So that's the person I would pick. I think the traits are the why, and I'm sure there are thousands of others, but that'd be my answer.
Yeah, I love that, because humility is sometimes to understand where humility is it's actually something you can train, because we all have an ego, and it's actually mastering that ego. And I think I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about Herb Keller, for the late Herb Keller from Southwest Airlines. If you really read into his journey and how he built Southwest Airline, and that culture really comes from humility as well. And he's mentioned in Good to Great as well. And Chip Conley, that was here on the show, mentioned him as his pen letter, mentor. He couldn't get meetings with him, but he could at least write him a letter, and then Herb Keller will write back, even though he had no reason to help Chip Conley in his early days as a founder of his business, but he was still writing these letters, and with humility, saying that he didn't have all the answers, even though he was a very successful businessman. And I think, yeah, so I think it's a very great way, and I love your examples as well. And I will put the link in the show notes to Sarah, so people have a read on her as well. So where can people learn more about champagne hospitality? And if they want to ask you something, how do they reach out?
Oh, you're nice. You're nice. We do have a website that is the most obvious. It's champagnehospitality.com. And if you go
Mm.
there, you can see all of our different hotels who also have websites of their own. So Le Barthélemy Hotel.com, RoyalChampagne.com, and our wine businesses similarly you can find there under coutureharvest.com, but lots of ways to find us through our individual hotels or through our company.
Good. Thank you so much, Denise, for coming on the show, sharing your journey, the great work you're doing in the business, and actually how you're also building culture and taking your dent at challenging the ways we think about climate and how we actually can solve climate change as well.
A pleasure, Michael. Thanks so much for having me. Be well, be safe.